I used to believe the stories about humans were exaggerated, tales meant to frighten recruits. But on the day I stood beside them, shoulder to shoulder in the fire and chaos of war, I understood why entire empires whisper their name in fear. Humans don't fight to survive. They fight to remind the universe why they were never meant to be underestimated. First contact. Protocol. The tribunal chamber stretched 300 meters in every direction, a massive sphere of polished obsidian that floated in the void between star systems. Inside, representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, each area designed to accommodate vastly different physiologies. Some breathed methane, others required crushing pressure, and a few existed partially in dimensions human eyes could not perceive. But today, every sensor, eye, and consciousness focused on the same thing: the question of humanity. Ambassador Velthan of the Crithian sovereignty shifted his 6 chitinous legs, his compound eyes catching the light from a dozen different sources. He had lived for 3 centuries, served on the Galactic Council for half that time, and had never seen the chamber this tense. Around him, species that had coexisted peacefully for millennia now bristled with barely concealed hostility, and all of it directed at the small delegation standing in the center of the chamber floor. The humans. There were only 5 of them, looking impossibly fragile in their simple dark suits. No armor, no environmental shields, no visible weapons. They stood on a platform designed for species 10 times their size, and yet, somehow they did not look small. The woman at the front, Dr. Sarah Chen according to the documentation, met the gaze of the Council Prime without flinching. Velthan found that curious. Most species, when standing before the oldest being in the known galaxy, showed some sign of submission or at least caution. The humans showed neither. Council Prime Zareth spoke, and reality itself seemed to vibrate with the weight of his words. His species had mastered stellar travel when most others were still learning to make fire. His form was difficult to perceive, existing partially out of phase with normal space-time, appearing as a shimmer of golden light roughly humanoid in shape. "We have reviewed your application for membership in the Galactic Coalition," Zareth said, his voice resonating through translation nodes implanted in every attendee. "The results are concerning," Sarah Chen nodded slowly. "We understand there are concerns, Council Prime. We hope to address them." Address them? The voice came from the Morgathi section, where beings made of living crystal pulsed with angry red light. "Your species has been in space for less than 50 standard cycles. You possess technology that is laughably primitive compared to ours. Your weapons still use chemical propulsion. Your ships require crews to physically occupy them. And yet in your first month of contact with the greater galaxy, you managed to destroy a Sardaukar raiding fleet." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Sardaukar were not members of the coalition, but they were known. They were pirates, yes, but they were dangerous pirates with ships that could outrun most coalition vessels, and weapons that could crack planets. A human merchant convoy had encountered them near the outer rim. The Sardaukar had demanded surrender. The humans had refused. When coalition peacekeepers arrived 3 hours later, they found 17 Sardaukar warships reduced to debris, and the human ships barely damaged, calmly proceeding to their destination. "We defended ourselves," Sarah said simply. "We're happy to share our tactical data with the Council for review. We did not initiate hostilities." Velthan watched the human woman carefully. She was not lying, that much was clear. The Crithian could detect lies through pheromone analysis, and this human's biochemistry remained steady. But there was something else there, something that made his instincts twitch. Confidence. Absolute, unshakable confidence. Another voice rose from the Valenian section, where aquatic beings floated in massive water tanks. "That is precisely what concerns us, Dr. Chen. You did not merely defend yourselves. You annihilated a force 3 times your size using weapons we abandoned as obsolete 30,000 cycles ago. When we asked how you accomplished this, your military officials laughed and said, 'We just shot them,' as if mass destruction were a casual matter." Sarah glanced at the man beside her, a broad-shouldered human with gray hair and numerous scars visible on his hands. Captain Marcus Webb, formerly of Earth's Combined Defense Force. He stepped forward slightly. "With respect, Counselor, it was a casual matter. They threatened civilians. We eliminated the threat. Where we come from, that's not complicated mathematics." The chamber erupted. Some species shouted objections, Others demanded the humans be expelled immediately, and a few simply powered down their translation nodes in frustration. Velthon remained silent, watching. He had studied the humans extensively since their discovery 6 months ago. Their planet, Earth, was a nightmare world by most standards. Crushing gravity, violent weather, predators at every level of the ecosystem, and a history of constant warfare among themselves. They had split the atom before leaving their planet. They had survived multiple near-extinction events. They had sent messages into deep space actively inviting contact with unknown civilizations. They were, by any rational measure, insane, and yet here they stood, 5 fragile beings of water and carbon, facing down the most powerful assembly in the galaxy without fear. Council Prime Zareth raised one shimmering appendage, and silence fell instantly. "There is one possibility," he said slowly. "A test, if you will. A way for humanity to prove it belongs among us not through military might, but through wisdom and compassion." Sarah's expression did not change, but Velthon saw her fingers twitch slightly. She knew what was coming. Everyone in the chamber who had been following galactic politics for the last decade knew what was coming. "The Vorath," Sarah said quietly. "Indeed," Zareth confirmed. "The Vorath problem has challenged our greatest minds for 15 cycles. Their homeworld suffers from a biological plague unlike anything in recorded history. It attacks their genetic structure at a fundamental level, rewriting their DNA randomly, causing cascading organ failures. We have sent our finest medical researchers, our most advanced technologies, our greatest scientific minds. Nothing has worked. The Vorath are dying and we cannot save them." The chamber remained silent. The Vorath were a peaceful species, artists and philosophers who had never sought conflict. Their extinction would be a tragedy beyond measure. It would also be a stain on the Coalition's honor that they could not protect one of their own members. "Your task is simple," Zareth continued. "Save the Vorath. If you succeed, humanity will be granted full membership in the Coalition with all rights and privileges. If you fail, Earth will be quarantined, forbidden from leaving your solar system until such time as we deem you have matured sufficiently." Velthon's antennae quivered. It was a death sentence one way or another. The Vorath plague had stumped species with millions of years of medical advancement. What could these primitive humans possibly accomplish? The test was designed to humble them, to force them to admit their limitations. Sarah turned to her team and they spoke quietly for a moment in their native language. Then she turned back to the council. "We accept." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even Zareth seemed momentarily taken aback, his golden shimmer flickering. "You understand the terms?" the Council Prime asked. "You have no obligations to accept this test. You could simply withdraw your application and maintain peaceful but limited contact with the Coalition." "We understand perfectly, Council Prime," Sarah said, "and we accept because the Vorath are dying. That's all the reason we need." Velthon found himself speaking before he consciously decided to. "I volunteer to accompany the human delegation as official observer." Every eye in the chamber turned to him. His fellow Crithian delegates clicked their mandibles in shock. It was not done for a council member to volunteer for such duty. But Velthon had made his decision. He needed to understand these humans. He needed to see what they would do when faced with the impossible. "Very well," Zareth said after a long pause. "Ambassador Velthon will serve as observer. Dr. Chen, you may select 2 additional Coalition members to assist you." Sarah's eyes swept the chamber, and Velthon felt those brown eyes pause on him for a moment. There was something in that gaze, a depth that his compound eyes struggled to process. Then she looked away, scanning the other sections. "I request Krenak of the Luminari to join us," she said. "Their expertise in crystalline biology may prove useful." A ripple of surprise ran through the chamber. The Luminari were beings of living crystal, powered by internal fusion reactions. They were brilliant scientists, but notoriously difficult to work with, considering most carbon-based life beneath their notice. In the Luminary section, a being of clear blue crystal, shot through with veins of silver light, rose slowly. "I accept." Krenak's voice chimed like bells. "Though I warn you, human, I have already spent 2 cycles studying the Vorath plague. I found no solution. I doubt your primitive biology will offer insights I missed." "Maybe," Sarah said with a slight smile. "Or maybe you were looking in the wrong places." 3 days later, Velthon found himself aboard a human vessel called the Nightingale. a name apparently referring to an earth bird known for healing properties in their ancient legends. The ship was tiny by Coalition standards, barely 100 meters long, with visible weld marks on the hull and technology that Velthan recognized from his species' own history 12,000 cycles ago, and yet it moved through hyperspace with an efficiency that made his mandibles click in confusion. He had been given quarters that were, he had to admit, surprisingly comfortable. The humans had researched Crithian requirements thoroughly, providing the correct atmosphere, temperature, and even a rough approximation of the nesting materials his species preferred. It was thoughtful in a way that surprised him. He made his way to the ship's medical bay, where Sarah and Krenak were already deep in discussion. The luminary scientist floated above the deck, their crystalline form refracting the harsh white lights into rainbow patterns. Sarah stood before a display showing strands of Vorath DNA, her fingers tracing patterns in the holographic projection. The plague attacks their telomeres first, Krenak was explaining, their voice carrying a note of frustration. It degrades the protective sequences at the ends of their chromosomes, then moves inward, scrambling base pairs at random. We have tried genetic stabilizers, quantum locks, even temporal stasis fields. Nothing stops it. Because you're treating it like a disease, Sarah said softly, still studying the display. What if it's not? Explain, Velthan said, announcing his presence. Sarah turned, unsurprised by his arrival. Every species we've encountered so far evolved in relatively stable environments. Your homeworld, Ambassador, has had a stable star for over 2 billion years. The luminary evolved in the heart of a nebula, with consistent radiation levels. Even the aquatic Valenians had stable ocean chemistry for millions of years. She paused, manipulating the display to show Earth. My planet is different. Our star has violent cycles. Our magnetic field fluctuates. Our climate swings from ice ages to tropical heat. Life on Earth evolved to adapt or die, your point being? Krenak chimed impatiently. My point being that your medicine is designed to maintain stability. Ours is designed to manage chaos. Sarah pulled up new data, showing what Velthan recognized as human DNA. Look at our genetic structure. We have redundancies upon redundancies, repair mechanisms that work in layers, and an immune system that literally rewrites itself to face new threats. We're built for a world that's trying to kill us every second of every day. And you believe this gives you insight into the Vorath plague? Velthan asked. I believe it gives us a different perspective, Sarah replied. When I look at this plague, I don't see a random attack. I see a pattern, a purpose. Krenak's crystal form pulsed with skeptical orange light. Purpose? The plague is killing them, is it? Sarah asked. Or is it trying to save them from something worse? The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and through the viewports, Velthan saw Vorath Prime for the first time. The planet was beautiful, covered in purple forests and silver oceans. But as they drew closer, he could see the empty cities, the abandoned settlements, the dark regions where nothing grew anymore. A dying world. Captain Webb's voice came over the intercom. We're being hailed by the surface. Elder Vorthas wishes to speak with you, Dr. Chen. The view screen flickered to life, showing a Vorath elder. The species was vaguely reptilian, but with features that reminded Velthan of both birds and mammals. Vorthas was old, his scales dulled and cracked, his eyes clouded, but there was dignity there and a desperate hope. You have come, Vorthas said simply, his voice barely above a whisper. The humans have come to save us or to watch us die. Sarah stepped forward, her hand touching the screen gently. We've come to help, Elder Vorthas, and we don't give up easily. May we have permission to land and begin our work? You have more than permission, Dr. Chen. You have our last hope. As the nightingale descended through the atmosphere, Velthan watched Sarah prepare her equipment. It was remarkably simple compared to the molecular reconstructors and quantum scanners the Coalition had brought. She had microscopes, chemical analysis tools, and what appeared to be actual physical notebooks made of paper. You intend to solve an impossible plague with those? He could not help but ask. Sarah looked up at him and smiled. It was not the confident smile of someone who knew they would succeed. It was the determined smile of someone who would try anyway. Ambassador, she said, on Earth we have a saying, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. The Coalition tried to solve this with advanced technology and failed. So maybe the answer isn't in advanced technology. Maybe the answer is in remembering what medicine was before it became so complicated. And if you're wrong? Krenak asked. Then we fail, Sarah said simply. But at least we'll fail trying something new. The ship touched down in what had once been the Vorath capital city. As the landing ramp lowered, Velthan saw hundreds of Vorath watching from windows and doorways, waiting, hoping, dying. Sarah Chen walked down that ramp carrying her primitive equipment and her impossible confidence, and Velthan realized something that sent a chill through his chitinous body. He believed she might actually do it. The humans were not stronger than the Coalition species. They were not smarter. Their technology was laughable by comparison. But they had something else, something that had been missing from the Coalition for too long. They had hope, and sometimes, Velthan was beginning to understand, hope was the most dangerous weapon in the universe. The Vorath solution, the medical facility, had once been a center of healing and hope for the Vorath people. Now it was a monument to failure. Velthan walked through corridors lined with equipment from 47 different species, each representing the Coalition's best attempt to cure the plague. Quantum resonance chambers stood silent. Genetic resequencers gathered dust. Temporal stasis pods hummed with barely contained power, preserving the dying but unable to heal them. Sarah Chen ignored all of it. She had set up her workspace in what had been a simple examination room, one of the oldest parts of the facility. Her equipment looked absurdly primitive next to the technological marvels around her. A basic microscope, Petri dishes, glass vials and pipettes that required manual operation, tools that the Coalition had not used in tens of thousands of cycles. For 3 days now, Velthan had watched her work. She did not use computers to analyze the plague. She observed it directly, watching under her microscope as the disease attacked Vorath cells. She took notes by hand, filling pages with sketches and observations. She barely slept, subsisting on a dark liquid called coffee that made Velthan's chemical sensors recoil in horror. Krenak floated nearby, their crystalline form pulsing with frustrated amber light. This is pointless, the Luminari scientist chimed. You have been staring at cells for 72 hours. What could you possibly learn that our quantum-level analysis did not reveal? Sarah did not look up from her microscope. How fast does your quantum scanner complete an analysis? 0.003 seconds, Krenak replied with obvious pride. Exactly, Sarah said. You see everything all at once. I'm watching things happen in real time. She finally looked up, her eyes red from exhaustion. Come here. Both of you. I want to show you something. Velthan approached, his compound eyes focusing on the display screen connected to her microscope. It showed a Vorath cell, and as they watched, the plague attacked. The DNA strands began to unravel, base pairs scrambling as the genetic code rewrote itself. We have seen this thousands of times, Krenak said impatiently. Watch closer, Sarah instructed, her finger pointing to a specific region. There, see that? The plague attacks the telomeres first, yes, but watch what happens next. Velthan focused his attention. The cell was dying, that much was clear. But as the DNA scrambled, he noticed something odd. Certain sequences were being rewritten, but not randomly. There was a pattern, subtle but definitely present. The plague is not random, Sarah said quietly. It's rewriting their DNA, but it's following a template. It's trying to change them into something else. Impossible, Krenak chimed, but their light pulsed with uncertain purple. We would have detected a template. You were looking at the quantum level, Sarah said. At the level of individual particles. But biology does not work at the quantum level. It works at the chemical level, the molecular level. You were looking too closely to see the forest for the trees. Velthan felt his mandibles click in confusion. I do not understand that phrase. It means sometimes you can be so focused on the details that you miss the bigger picture, Sarah explained. She pulled up another screen, showing a map of the Vorath homeworld. Red zones marked areas where the plague was most active. Look at this. The plague started in the southern continent in the oldest Vorath settlements, places where their species first evolved. We know the origin point, Krenak said. That tells us nothing about a cure. It tells us everything about a cure, Sarah countered. Because it means the plague came from the planet itself, from the environment where the Vorath evolved. She turned to Velthan. Ambassador, you said your species evolved on a stable world. What about the Vorath? Velthan accessed his memory files. The Vorath homeworld has been stable for approximately 50 million standard cycles. Before that, There were significant climate fluctuations caused by orbital instabilities, which have been corrected, Krenak added. The Coalition installed orbital stabilizers 700 cycles ago to prevent future fluctuations. Sarah's eyes widened. You stabilized their orbit? When did the plague start? 15 cycles ago, Velthan said slowly, beginning to understand. 700 cycles of artificial stability, Sarah said, her voice growing excited. Generations of Vorath living in a perfectly controlled environment. And then something triggered a response, the planet itself remembering what it used to be. She turned back to her microscope. The plague is not trying to kill them. It is trying to readapt them to survive climate change that is not happening anymore. Krenak's crystalline form blazed with bright blue light, the luminary equivalent of shock. An evolutionary response to environmental change. But the environmental change was prevented. So the evolutionary response became a death sentence, Sarah finished. Their bodies are trying to adapt to conditions that no longer exist. The plague is not external. It is internal, written into their genetic memory from millions of years ago. Velthan's mind raced through the implications. Every treatment we tried was designed to stop the change to stabilize their genetics. Which only made it worse, Sarah said. Like trying to stop a river by building a dam. The pressure just builds until something breaks. She stood up, moving to another workstation. We have been thinking about this all wrong. We do not need to cure the plague. We need to let it finish. Let it finish killing them? Krenak chimed in horror. Let it finish changing them, Sarah corrected, but guide the change so it does not kill them in the process. She pulled up data on human evolutionary history. My species went through rapid changes several times. Ice ages forced us to adapt or die. We survived because our DNA had enough flexibility to change while still maintaining core functions. The Vorath DNA is trying to do the same thing, but it's been too long since they needed that flexibility. Their genetic repair mechanisms are rusty. She looked at both of them, and Velthan saw the fire of inspiration in her eyes. We do not cure the plague. We teach their bodies how to handle it. We reintroduce controlled environmental stresses gradually, giving their systems time to remember how to adapt without killing the host. That could take generations, Krenak protested. Or 3 weeks if we do it right, Sarah said. I need to speak with Elder Vorthas immediately. The meeting took place in the council chamber of the Vorath, a beautiful hall carved from living stone. Elder Vorthas sat with 6 other elders, all of them showing visible signs of the plague's progression. Their scales were discolored, their movements slow and painful. They were dying and they knew it. Sarah stood before them and Velthan stood beside her as official observer. Krenak hovered nearby, silent but attentive. Elder Vorthas, Sarah began. I believe I understand what is happening to your people, but my solution is not a cure in the traditional sense. It will require your entire species to undergo a transformation. Vorthas's clouded eyes focused on her. Explain, please. Sarah did, laying out her theory with clarity and precision. The orbital stabilization. The genetic memory. The plague is an adaptation response to a threat that no longer existed. As she spoke, Velthan watched the elders' reactions. Confusion gave way to understanding, then to hope, then to fear. You are saying we must become different than we are, Vorthas said slowly. That to survive, we must change our very nature. Your nature is already changing, Sarah said gently. That's what the plague is doing. I'm suggesting we guide that change instead of fighting it. Your species evolved to handle climate variation. Millions of years ago, your ancestors survived ice ages and heat waves. That ability is written in your DNA. It is just sleeping. The plague woke it up, but without the actual environmental pressure, your bodies do not know how to handle the transition. And your treatment would provide that pressure? Another elder asked. Controlled pressure, yes. We would gradually introduce climate variations, carefully monitored, cold cycles, heat cycles, atmospheric changes, all within safe parameters but enough to trigger your adaptive responses properly. Your immune systems would learn to manage the changes. Your genetic repair mechanisms would remember how to work. In 3 to 4 weeks, your bodies would complete the adaptation that the plague started. And if it does not work? Vorthas asked quietly. Sarah met his eyes without flinching. Then you die. But you are already dying. This gives you a chance. The chamber fell silent. Velthan could hear his own breathing. A soft whistle through his spiracles. These people were facing the end of everything they had ever known. Not just death, but transformation into something new. It was asking them to let go of millions of years of evolution. "There is another option," Krenak chimed suddenly, their voice unusually quiet. "We could put your entire species in stasis. Preserve you as you are until we find a true cure." "A cure that might never come," Sarah said. "But you would remain Vorith," Krenak insisted, "as you are now." Vorthus looked between the human and the Luminari, and Velthan saw something profound in that dying elder's face. A choice between remaining themselves and ceasing to exist, or changing into something new and surviving. It was a choice no species should have to make. "How long before we must decide?" Vorthus asked. "The plague is accelerating," Sarah said honestly. "You have perhaps 2 weeks before it becomes irreversible. After that, too many will have died for the population to recover. Then we will discuss among ourselves," Vorthos said. "Thank you, Dr. Chen, for offering us hope. That is more than anyone else has given us." They left the chamber, and Velthan found himself walking beside Sarah through the empty streets of the Vorath capital. The sun was setting, painting the purple forests in shades of crimson and gold. It was beautiful. It was heartbreaking. "You truly believe this will work?" Velthan asked. "I believe it's their best chance," Sarah replied. "But I will not lie to you, Ambassador. I'm terrified. If I'm wrong, I will be responsible for the extinction of an entire species. Yet you offered the solution anyway, because not offering it would guarantee their extinction." She stopped walking, looking up at the alien sky. "That's what it means to be human, Ambassador. We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. Our technology is primitive compared to yours. But we do not give up. We cannot give up. It's not in our nature, even when the odds are impossible, especially then." She smiled, and it was sad and fierce at the same time. "My species almost went extinct 12 times on our own planet. Ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, pandemics, wars. We survived all of it not because we were strong enough or smart enough, but because we refused to accept that we could not survive. We adapted. We changed. We became whatever we needed to be to keep going. And you believe the Vorith can do the same?" "I believe every species has that capacity," Sarah said. "They just need to remember it." The next morning, Elder Vortha summoned them back to the council chamber. All 7 elders were present, along with what appeared to be representatives from every major Vorath settlement. The chamber was filled to capacity. Vortha stood, his movements painful but determined. "We have made our decision," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "We choose life. We choose change. We choose to become what we must be to survive." Sarah bowed her head respectfully. "Then we begin immediately." The next 3 weeks were the most intense of Velthan's long life. Sarah worked with Captain Webb and the Nightingale's crew to modify the orbital stabilizers. Instead of maintaining perfect stability, they would introduce carefully calculated variations. The Coalition had spent resources making the planet stable. Now humans were deliberately making it unstable again. Krenak, despite their initial skepticism, threw themselves into the work with unexpected enthusiasm. The Luminary's crystalline mind proved invaluable in calculating safe variation parameters. They worked alongside Sarah, the advanced and the primitive somehow complementing each other perfectly. Velthan coordinated with Coalition medical teams, bringing in additional resources and personnel. Ships arrived from 20 different species, all wanting to observe, to help, to witness what might be the salvation or the doom of the Vorath people. The changes started small. Temperature fluctuations of a few degrees, slight variations in atmospheric pressure. The Vorath experienced discomfort, but they did not die. Their bodies began to respond, genetic repair mechanisms activating, immune systems strengthening. Then the plague accelerated. For 3 days, Velthan thought they had failed. Vorath across the planet collapsed as their DNA rewrote itself rapidly. Sarah did not sleep during those 3 days. She moved from patient to patient, adjusting treatments, recalculating parameters, refusing to give up even when everything seemed lost. On the 4th day, the first patient stabilized. On the 5th day, a dozen more. By the end of the 2nd week, the mortality rate began to drop. By the 3rd week, new Vorath were being born with the genetic changes already complete. On the 23rd day, Sarah stood in the council chamber before Elder Vorthus. The elder's scales had changed color. shifting from the traditional silver to a deeper blue-gray. His eyes were clearer, his movements stronger. He was different. But he was alive. "You saved us," Vortha said simply. "You saved yourselves," Sarah replied. "I just reminded you how." The return to the tribunal chamber was very different from their first visit. This time, the humans entered to a standing ovation from species that had demanded their rejection mere weeks ago. Velthan stood beside them, no longer as an observer but as an advocate. Council Prime Zareth's golden shimmer seemed brighter, more focused. "Dr. Chen," the ancient being said, "you have accomplished what the Coalition's greatest minds could not. You have saved the Vorath, and in doing so, you have taught us all a valuable lesson." "We're just glad we could help," Sarah said. "The lesson," Zareth continued, "is that advancement is not always measured in technology or age. Sometimes the newest species has the most to teach. Sometimes looking backward is how we move forward. Sometimes accepting change is the only way to survive." "Does this mean," Sarah began. "Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Coalition," Zareth declared, "with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities. Welcome, Dr. Chen. Welcome to the greater galaxy." The chamber erupted in celebration. Species that had never agreed on anything were united in welcoming humanity. Velthan clicked his mandibles in what his species considered a smile. Later, on the observation deck of the Nightingale as they prepared to return to Earth, Velthan found Sarah staring out at the stars. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking about how many problems out there might have simple solutions that everyone is overlooking because they're too complicated in their thinking," Sarah said. "I'm thinking about all the species who need help, all the challenges that seem impossible, and I'm thinking that humanity has a lot of work to do." She turned to him and that fierce smile was back. "We're not the strongest. We're not the smartest. We're not the most advanced. But we're here now, and we're going to make a difference." Velthan thought about the Vorath alive and thriving on their homeworld. He thought about Sarah's primitive tools solving a problem that had stumped quantum computers. He thought about humanity, this young, impossible species that refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. "I believe you will," he said. As the Nightingale jumped to hyperspace, carrying the newest members of the Galactic Coalition home, Velthan made a note in his official report. It was simple, just one line, but it would be recorded in the Coalition archives forever. "The humans have taught us that sometimes the most advanced solution is to remember what we've forgotten. They have reminded us that hope, adaptability, and refusal to surrender are not primitive traits. They are the foundation of all true strength. Humanity does not just deserve membership in the Coalition. The Coalition needs humanity. We have become so advanced that we forgot how to be simple, so stable that we forgot how to adapt, so certain that we forgot how to hope. The humans will change us just as surely as they changed the Vorath, and perhaps that is exactly what we need." 6 months later, reports would come in from across the galaxy. Human medical teams were being requested by dozens of species. Human negotiators were solving disputes that had lasted centuries by asking questions no one else thought to ask. Human engineers were fixing problems with solutions so simple that advanced species were embarrassed they hadn't thought of them first. The galaxy had feared humanity for their capacity for violence, but the galaxy would come to respect humanity for something far more powerful: their capacity for hope, their willingness to adapt, and their absolute refusal to accept the impossible. In the end, that was what it meant to be human. Not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most advanced. Just the most stubborn, the most creative, and the most determined never to give up. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity.